So I think that sometimes in relationships, God allows us to experience that distress because He wants us to learn to calm ourselves down.
Yes.
He wants us to learn to stay.
Yeah.
He wants us to learn to grow.
Welcome to the Jody podcast. So, today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think a lot of people viewing this video can relate to, and that is the pruning season. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear that word, I don't really feel that good about it. It's kind of something that you might think it's necessary, but it's not something you necessarily welcome.
Yeah, I mean, usually when I think of the word pruning, I'm thinking of plants. Um, you know how sometimes when the plants are growing, they kind of want to make sure they grow up a particular way, so they'll kind of prune them as they grow and get rid of, either branches that are curving or things that are not going according to plan. Um, and the funny thing is, even though you're cutting pieces off, the end result is good. But I think it's the cutting that's the problem.
For sure. And I think that when we
Mm-hmm.
use the plant analogy, sometimes it feels like if you cut off pieces, you're hurting the plant because you're making it
Right.
smaller. You're taking things away as opposed to adding. So when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the pruning season in the life of a Christian, I think sometimes we also have to talk about not only what is pruning, but what does it look like? What does it feel like? Like, what are the signs that you're being pruned? And then
Mm-hmm.
delving into, okay, so how do we handle the pruning season? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to pruning, pruning can refer to lots of
Mm-hmm.
different phases in a Christian's life. Like, I don't think it's just in preparation for marriage, or that's the context that we
Mm-hmm.
kind of discuss it here. But I feel like as we're growing in our Christianity and we're maturing, I feel like God is constantly pruning us. And, I feel like it's what people will describe as that whole sanctification process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like as a Christian, you are constantly growing or evolving.
At least you should be.
At least you should be. That part. But I do think that it's hard. I don't feel like it's only that it's hard, but sometimes I feel like we don't even recognize when it's being done. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times pruning can feel like punishment, and I think that's where the cutting comes in. So a part
Yes.
of you will interpret the pruning process almost like God is against you.
Yeah. No, I definitely can relate to that. And even when you were talking about pruning and how it's a process that you are constantly undergoing as a Christian, there was a part
Mm-hmm.
of me that said sometimes you get tired of the pruning. It's
Right,
like
right.
you may know that it's something that you need as a Christian, but you kind of reach a point where you're kind of like, is this over yet?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I almost done? But I think one of the things you have to recognize, like you said, it's a lifelong process of sanctification.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that God is using not to punish, not to torture, but to actually make us better in more ways than one.
I agree. But I think that, of course, a lot of times when you're being pruned, like what you said, it's almost like you guys know the story of Job. It will feel like what she was saying before, where it's kind of continual. But I feel like the reason why it's continual is related to the growth process. So if you're thinking about the plant, if a plant is always growing, for the most part, it needs some kind of pruning. So think about even like plants you have outside or something like that, or bushes or something like that. You have to keep trimming it, keep shaping it, keep doing whatever in
Mm-hmm.
order for it to thrive. And I feel like the Bible gives a similar analogy.
Mm-hmm.
So in John 15, verse, I would actually say 1 and 2 instead of just 2,
Mm-hmm.
is talking about Jesus being the true vine.
Yeah.
And the verse says, I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so
Mm-hmm.
they will produce even more. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go on to verse 3, it actually says, you have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Okay? So, what I think that taps into that continual process we were talking about. But I also think one of the most important parts of this verse is that it says, he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they will produce even more. And as Christians, I feel like we're the branches that bear fruit.
Yes.
So it's going to require, unless you stop bearing fruit, a continual process of trimming. And I'm not going to lie and say that I enjoy it, because I don't. But I do think that as we continue to grow and mature spiritually, that will always be a part of the process, so that when we become or grow as disciples, we have more impact.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it's later on in that same chapter where the Bible talks about how you grow when you remain attached to the vine. So that relates to relationship. So you mentioned how as long as you're growing, you're going to be pruned. So as long as you remain in relationship with God, it is a steady progress, steady growth, moving in a positive direction. Not to say you're going to do that perfectly, because I don't think anybody does that perfectly. I know that I don't. But it's more so as long as you remain attached to God, what happens is he has a vested interest in seeing you bloom and blossom and bring forth fruit. Now, for every Christian, that fruit is going to look different. Like, there are different skills and abilities we each have. But in general, what you're going to see is you're going to grow in, like, for example, the fruit of the Spirit. You're going to grow in patience and all of these other positive qualities. So when it comes to being pruned, biblically speaking, it's about remaining attached to the vine, which means your relationship with God is constantly growing. And then the things that are positive, he prunes so that those things blossom even more. And then the things that are not so positive, he gets rid of them so that you can actually grow in sanctification.
Yeah, but I think in regards to, because I mean, we could go on all day when you're talking about general pruning, but I feel like with regards to relationship, there's a lot of pruning that's done. I would say some directly by God himself, and some I would say by people that you date or you eventually get into relationships with. Like, I can think of times where when I first started talking to someone, or when I first started dating someone, of course, in those initial phases, everything seems all great and dandy, and there doesn't really seem to be much going on. But as you go through, months and years, and you're in a relationship with this person, it somewhat becomes a mirror where you start to see all of these different things that need to be refined, and some of them, that needs to be cut off, because you don't want that to keep bearing fruit, and then others of it needs to be refined so that it can improve or get better. So I can remember when I was thinking of my early relationships, like when I was in my, I would say, late teens, early 20s. I look back at that phase of my life and I'm like, oh my God, Josie, we were crazy. We are part of the crazy committee, because there were so many things where I could tell it's not, it's just not just me. We were both reactive. We were both reactive to a lot of different things. And you could tell that there was a lot of good fruit. So for example, I feel like the fruit of the Spirit, like you were referencing before, there was love at times, there was joy, there was peace, there was long suffering, there was self-control. But at the same time, there were other elements of it that were not healthy. Some of which I would even call toxic. They were petty. Sometimes it would be just impulsive or reactionary. It was angry. It was bitter. It was it was a lot. It was a lot. And when you have the good moments, sometimes it makes you feel like as if it makes you feel like things are good, and you almost forget about the bad. But then when the bad comes, and the bad is really bad, then it kind of shows you, oh no, there's a lot to be done here. And I remember when I got out of that first relationship, I really had to talk through some things. And the funny thing is, I didn't even realize I had to talk through it. I remember, and just in case people miss the first two, go watch them. Miss the first two episodes. We're both psychologists. And as part of our program, we had to engage in a process called supervision. And basically, supervision means, as you're seeing clients, You also have to be supervised by a licensed psychologist so that you can make sure that your treatment is going well, you're following up on the appropriate things, you're given the right diagnoses, etc. And in the process, they kind of assess your reaction to things or how you deal with your cases or your clients. And I had this one client, and my supervisor was asking me about how I responded to them in a session and trying to get some background on that. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know why I responded that way. So she starts asking me questions about past relationships and things like that. And as we get into it, we dive into not only some of my past friendships, we also dive into the relationship that I had initially. And one of the things that she ended up pointing out was, I think you processed the ending of that first relationship as an emotional trauma. And I was like, what? What? Because I'm like, come on now. PTSD. Like in my mind, I'm always thinking, I'm thinking when someone says trauma, they're saying PTSD, like a war veteran. We saw something serious. Yeah, we saw something serious. We saw someone who almost got killed, or we saw someone who got killed or got shot. Somebody was violated in some way, and so on and so forth. So I was like, I don't think so. But she was like, no. Everything that your brain is unable to process at the time that it happens to you is registered as a trauma. Hold on, y'all. Technical difficulties. Let's fix it.
I was actually thinking that. I was like, just do it.
Blooper moment. Okay, live. Are we good? Okay, we're good. Okay. So at that time when she said it, I was like, I've never heard of trauma described like that before. Yeah. So it shocked me. But God used that supervisor to prune certain things where I learned about how to manifest feelings of love, joy, peace, long suffering, self-control. I can't remember them all. Don't come for me. And reduce other feelings that had to do with toxicity. Because up until that point, it had made it so that I was afraid of relationships because the pruning process for me was just that severe. Yeah.
But no, I mean, just hearing your story, number one, shout out to good supervisors, but it's also a reminder that God can use anybody to prune. It's not just the person you're dating. It can be family. It can be friends. It can be a supervisor.
Yeah.
But in different ways, the people that you come into contact is going to bring out different things in you, and God can use that person to prune you in some way.
Yeah.
So sometimes you may encounter someone who you consider a difficult person, but God may use that person as a part of the pruning. Yeah. Just like he may use a positive person. So I do think it's important for us to kind of recognize sometimes part of the process is us having to deal with things that we wouldn't otherwise have dealt with. So for example, that trauma that you didn't even know that was there.
Right.
But God used your supervisor to point it out so that it's something that you could work on.
Yeah. But I think one of the biggest issues is that even after that process, there's a continual pruning. So you'll get through a relationship and feel like, okay, I got the lesson. I got it. I'm good to go now. I'm ready, Lord. I'm ready.
Lies you tell.
Only to get to another relationship. And it's like, oh, there's more of this. All right.
Yes.
Let's go on. And then the funny thing is when you talk to other women who are married, they're still going through that process. So I do think people have to be realistic because I think sometimes when people think preparation, they think, okay, so preparation and then when I get married, it stops. But I actually think the preparation or the pruning is ongoing, just like it described with the whole vine process. So.
No, for sure. I do think it's ongoing. And even when you were describing feeling like there are certain lessons you learn in a relationship, what I've actually found is in the pruning season, God helps us to notice what our patterns are. So a lot of times we have patterns that we're not even aware of, but it's almost like God allows certain people to keep coming into our life that helps us to recognize, oh, this is something that you need to work on, or this is something that you could improve. So in different situations, the pruning is going to look a certain way, but the main thing is God is using that situation, that person, that relationship to grow you and make you better. But that doesn't necessarily mean once you get married, that process stops.
Yeah, I get it. But, I think too, one of the things that people don't think about, and I don't want to say, I'm going to, okay, disclaimer. I don't want people to think that this means that in order to be married, you have to be at a certain level. I do not believe that, not one bit.
You mean to tell me you don't have to be ready to be married?
Anywho, I do not believe that is part of. There's a lot of people who will make it seem like, oh, well, if you're not at a certain point, God is pruning, He's refining,
He's
blah, blah,
making
blah.
you ready. He's preparing you. He's growing you. But the moment you're done, you're just going to get a ring on that finger.
I feel like that's unrealistic, especially because, as I said before, there are married women who are still being pruned. Yeah. So to me, I don't think that if you're not married, it means that you're not ready. I think that there's timing involved. I do think that some people, and I'm not even going to say I know why, because I will not presume to know the mind of God. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. But I feel like as if there are some people, as they get pruned, the pruning will be pre-marriage. There are some people, when they get pruned, most of it will happen after marriage. Some people won't even know how much they have to work on until after they get married. I think at that point, the marriage serves as a mirror. Because I've known people who are like, and if you guys pay attention, you'll see it too. There are celebrities, for example, because I don't want to pick anybody might know. There are celebrities that they'll date for years or be in a relationship for years. They get married, they're divorced like 2 years later, sometimes less. Yeah. And I think it's because there's something about marriage that opens the door to a mirror or a pruning that you have not experienced before. So I definitely don't think that marriage is a sign of readiness. I do think it is a part of God's timing. So for some reason, God feels like it's optimal for some people to go through that process pre-marriage. Yes. And then sometimes He feels like it's optimal for people to go through that process post-marriage. Yeah. So I actually think this video is helpful for both groups. It's not just helpful for singles, but I think it's helpful for married women as well. And for, of course, for men, but, mostly who we're talking about as women because that's our experience. But I do think that when you're going through that process, God is not just removing bad habits or bad characteristics. He's showing you a part of yourself that you do not know. Yeah. Or that you're not aware of. I don't know if people have heard of the concept of Johari window, but in psychology, that's a concept that has to do with these 4 elements where when you present, there's a part of you that you know and that other people know. Yeah. The second element is there's a part of you that you know that is hidden to other people. Then there's a part of you that other people see that you don't see. That's your blind spot. And then there's a part of you that's hidden to other people and it's hidden to you. And for me and for the believer, I believe that is the part that God sees. And He is trying to reveal to you during that process. And that's why He's cutting that thing off. Yeah. And I feel like as if He's trying to grow you in ways that would be more fruitful, because that part that is hidden, that you're unaware of, it can do a lot of damage. I'm actually more fearful to be in relationships with people that are ignorant or lack self-awareness because they'll hurt you, but not on purpose. Yes. They just don't know.
Exactly. But no, even when you were talking about the whole mirror thing, one of the things that came to mind that's different about marriage is you can't back out of it. So a lot of times we don't recognize that our pattern when things aren't going well is to leave. We pack our stuff. We call our girlfriends. We say, hey, I'm done with him. Come and help me get out of here. You do that. You disconnect. I'm out. But if there were things that you needed to grow in that relationship, you don't have that opportunity because there's no pressure to stay. Versus when you're married and you know the only way I can get out of this is through a legal process called divorce. It's like, oh, shoot, now I have to deal with all of the things. Going back to the Johari window, the things that are either in your blind spot or the things that are hidden. So, one of the things that I think it's kind of important to keep in mind is when it comes to marriage, going back to what you said, this will benefit single women as well as married women. God is using multiple situations in different ways to show you things about yourself so that you can address them. And one of the things that God uses the pruning season to help us learn is unconditional love. And that's something that ideally, as Christians, we would show it to the people we encounter, the people in our family, friends, and in relationships. But a lot of times that's not what we do. So I think God uses the pruning season to help to get rid of or remove those things that would get in the way of us showing unconditional love. But sometimes when it hurts, we kind of just pull back, run away, so we don't get to necessarily learn that thing that he's trying to teach us.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, the unconditional love piece. Because a lot of us don't even know what that is. Like, if we're being honest, most of our love is conditional.
For sure.
We don't
For
just
sure.
offer our love feelings. Most people, when they feel like I'm not happy anymore or I don't love this person anymore, they feel like that's my cue to leave.
Yeah.
And sometimes they could do more, but they're not motivated to do more. And the lack of motivation, I think, is because the love is dwindling or it's waning. The funny thing is, I saw something recently. I want to say it was today, and I can't even remember the ups and downs of it. Do not quote me on this. But it was almost like it was either a state or a country. They imposed conditions about if people got divorced. It was almost mandatory that the split is automatically 50-50, reducing child support. And in that area, like that state or whatever it was, all of a sudden, divorce rates went down by 25%.
Oh my gosh.
I want to say it was a state. And I was like, really? So it kind of shows a negative motivation as well. When people know, oh, okay, even if I have primary custody, it's not going to get me a big amount to take care of these kids. They can slow down on it. Now, obviously, people can say, oh, there's plenty of reasons why that happened, but it's an interesting trend following the implementation of certain policies in the state. So some of us could actually deal with a lot more than what we think we can, but when we lose that motivation, we're just like, I just want to get out. And I feel like, our society doesn't really facilitate staying together as much as it used to. So people don't get to experience or provide unconditional love. Most people leave before they get there.
Yeah. No, yeah. When you were saying that, it actually made me think of an exercise analogy. I can remember probably years ago at this point, I used to work out with my brother, and he would want me to do planks for like a minute or two. And you guys, oh
y'all
my
don't
gosh.
laugh at her. She's complaining about a minute plank.
Oh my goodness. It was like torture. Torture, girl. I tell you. But what I think is interesting, every time I did the plank, I was focused on, oh my God, this hurts. Am I almost done? Am I almost done? And then I came across a study that said they did research looking at people who are exercising and feel like they don't have anything left to give. And they found when you think you have nothing left to give, you still have 60% left. I was like, surprised. What?
Not surprised.
I was like, what?
The power of the mind.
The power of the mind. And then what I would notice when I would be doing the plank with my brother, if he told me how much time I had left, that enabled me to keep going. It was like, okay, only 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, But when I didn't know how much time I had left, it was like I just felt completely weak, completely drained. So for a lot of us in relationships, we're doing that same thing without necessarily meaning to.
Yeah. And I mean, because we're psychologists, you're going to see some of the concepts seep in. But as you're describing that phenomenon, I'll actually use a similar analogy when talking to my clients in session, because I'm like, you have to understand how the body works.
Yes.
So whenever you're going through something that is scary for you, or at least that's a mindset you have. It makes you nervous. It activates the nervous system, basically. So in that moment, you're thinking of a few responses. You're thinking of fight, you're thinking of flight, you're thinking of freeze, you're thinking of fawn, which is a people-pleasing response. So most of us, when we start to feel, we run from it.
Yes.
It's the flight response,
Yes.
okay? Some of us will attack it aggressively, but a lot of us will just run from it. Or some of us won't know what to do, where it's like both systems are activated at the same time, we freeze.
Yeah.
And other people will do, okay, whatever makes you, okay. You know, like they'll people please because that gets me my peace back, seemingly. So ultimately, what ends up happening is, and even when you're doing a workout, whether you recognize it, as it gets tough, you're experiencing that same nervous system response. And that's why if you have a trainer or someone leading a class, they're going to be like, breathe. Why? Because deep breathing shows your body, oh, wait a second. Hold on now. If she's breathing like that, she must be okay. There's no way you could really be in a panic situation and be able to go,
yeah.
You can't do that. If you're actually in a bad or dangerous situation, you are shallow breathing.
Yeah.
Because your body is preparing you for that scenario. So as you calm down your nervous system, you are able to not react, but respond. Choose the response that you want to have. Your body is always going to try to get the way of least resistance. So even when working out, what you'll see is when things get harder, your body will try to compromise your form. It's a way to make it easier for you.
Okay.
So we start to kind of shift a little. We start to bend the plank. We kind of put, you lift up instead of staying flat down.
Yep.
It's your body trying to make it easier for you. And in the marriage or relationships, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
We try to figure out ways to make it easier for us, even if that's hurting the other person or hurting the relationship. And we compromise the relationship for our comfort because now it calms down my response temporarily, but it gives us that temporary relief.
Yeah.
So a lot of us will continue in these unhealthy patterns or will continue to run because we have not yet learned to stay in the process even though it feels uncomfortable.
So I feel like you kind of said a mouthful just with that analogy, because what I'm taking away from what you said is when it comes to pruning, pruning helps you to grow in the fruit of the Spirit. Pruning helps you to break cycles, habits, and old patterns.
Right.
Pruning helps you to grow in unconditional love. Pruning helps you learn how to withstand discomfort, something that a lot of us struggle with. So when God is pruning us, there's a reason for it. Going back to what you said earlier, it's not about punishment. And I know sometimes people may relate to feeling like it feels like God is torturing you. It feels like it's one thing after another, after another, after another, and you kind of wonder why. But all of those things that you said, those are the things that God is working out in us.
Right. And I think that sometimes we run from that. And I think it's normal. Like, even when I'm looking at the story of Joseph, one of the things that you see is he's going through all of these things. And he gets to a point where after he interprets the dream of the butler and the baker, he's like, don't forget about me to the butler, because obviously he wants to get out. Well, the butler forgot about him for a good 2 years. And I feel like in life, that's what we probably feel like God forgot about us for a certain number of years. But him telling the butler, don't forget about me, shows that he wanted to get out. And while God didn't get him out right away, one of the things that you notice throughout the story of Joseph is it will constantly say, and the Lord was with Joseph. But the Lord was with Joseph. And the Lord was with Joseph. And I think it's to show you that during the pruning process, it might be tough, but God is there.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar to, let's say, a baby. You might be sleep training a baby or trying to train it to stay in a crib or whatever it is, or to self-soothe.
Yeah.
The baby will feel like you're torturing me because as it's crying, you don't come to its aid. But what the baby doesn't understand is if I don't do this for you, you're not going to be able to handle anything.
Yeah.
At least not without my help, because now
Yeah.
I'm going to have to externally always soothe you, or you're going to have to find someone
Mm-hmm.
who is constantly soothing you. But
Mm-hmm.
when you allow a baby to experience some distress, if you watch for a bit, you will notice they learn to calm themselves down. They
Mm-hmm.
learn to regulate their own systems. So I think that sometimes in relationships, God allows us to experience that distress
Mm-hmm.
because He wants us to learn to calm ourselves down.
Yes.
He wants us to learn to stay.
Yeah.
He wants us to learn to grow. Thanks for tuning in to our episode about pruning. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for part two, so that we can talk about more of the pruning process and how God uses that to refine and prepare us, not only for marriage, but for family and for ministry. If you haven't yet, subscribe, like, comment on our videos. Let us know more of what you want to see, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.